I'd like to welcome the viewers to this test talk where the topic is the importance of innovation in the automotive industry in Canada. We're joined today by a prime leader in the field of innovation in the automotive industry, Colin, Singh, Dhillon. Colin is an internationally recognized innovator and world leader in innovation in the automotive industry. He's the Chief Technical Officer for the Automotive Parts Manufacturing Association. He provides leadership to the Canadian automotive industry through national initiatives like Project Arrow, Canada's first zero-emission concept vehicle. His ongoing work in the fields of connected, autonomous security and electrification of mobility provides Colin with a global platform as a thought leader in the digitization of the automotive sector. Colin is a leader in philanthropy, exemplified by his role as founder and president of the Sikh Heritage Museum of Canada and co-founder and chairman of the global syndicate on mobility cybersecurity. He is a leader in design, exemplified in his role as the only Canadian judge at the Eyes on Design panel for the North American International Auto Show. Colin wrote and directed a documentary film, The Lion That Lost Its Roar, on Prince Victor Albert J. Duleep Singh, winning many awards. Colin was awarded the 2012 Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal for significant contributions to Canada. In 2017, Colin was recognized as top 500 global Sikh role models. Colin is also an author and lecturer. He has just launched his book, The Three Houses, A Journey to a Better Life. In addition to his automotive experience, Colin has lectured on design and innovation for over a decade. So welcome, Colin. Welcome to this test talk.
Peter, thank you. I am humbled. I am somewhat blushing as well.
I'd like to start with your 20 years in the automotive industry in a leadership role in innovation and design. In your book, you talk about at the university, one of your first projects was to do an automotive design, and you decided to redesign the exhaust system of a Honda Civic. Was that part of what made you desire to get involved in automotive design, or have you always had an interest in this area?
My brother found an old, I think it was a dictionary from the 1970s, Peter, and he shared some of the images of the hardback inner and hardback outer. And I had probably got a hold of that dictionary, maybe at the age of 5 or 6 or 7. And I'd sketched on there. And the interesting thing is I draw a house and I drew a car. And I also wrote ABC, which is funny because I spent 20 years of my auto life at a company which started with the letters ABC. To be honest, I never really thought that I was ever going to go towards the auto industry. If so, I would have gone to Coventry University back in the UK and specialized in vehicle design. I was more of an industrial design, looking at all problems to solve. That Honda project, which you mentioned, which was actually just I think it was like a 1-day or a 2-day project. For me, that muffler that used to be kind of, perpendicular to the bumper on the rear of a vehicle, they used to hang down in the 80s and 90s, Peter, and they just looked so ugly, like as if there was like an afterthought, as if you needed to take the bumper and just peel it down to cover the muffler, and that's what I suggested. About a decade later, it becomes a standard, and today all mufflers are absolutely embedded into the rear fascia because nobody wants to see them. But for me, the journey was always about problem solving, Peter.
Colin, thank you for that explanation of how you got into the automotive sector. In your LinkedIn profile, you describe 7 patents illustrative of your innovative work in the automotive industry. Can you describe some of the other innovative highlights of your automotive career before joining the APMA?
Well, Peter, if I could take a few seconds, I could actually peel it back to even before I joined the automotive sector. I was actually working as an art director for a gentleman called Brian Cole, who used to do a lot of the miniature modeling for movies, for sci-fi movies, and like Spider-Man and Superman and Batman in the 80s. And so I spent a stint helping to develop these miniatures. I even did a Mars advert for Canadian TV where I had to do a 1950s flying saucer. For me, it was a journey of taking my kind of, talent of being able to see things in my head in three dimensions, and also finding this knack of quite easily sketching the ideas down and then being able to annotate and explain them for others, which I think led me to the 19 years at ABC Group. And as the legend goes, my wife cut out an ad from a newspaper where they were looking for a packaging designer at one of their plants. And I was quite adamant, Peter, I was not going to take the job. Like, I am an industrial designer. How dare you expect me to take the job of a packaging designer? Well, her comments were, well, we need the money and you need a job. So why don't you just go for the interview? There's nothing to lose. They challenged me to design packaging for Linamar's machine parts, which were going to be shipped from Guelph, Ontario to multiple states and cities in the US. And these parts had to go from location A to location B without being damaged, and in the hundreds and thousands annually. So this packaging wasn't what I was expecting to be packaging. These were these dunnage trays which had to nest, and you had to maximize a container. They challenged me on my interview to go away, come back a week later with solutions, which I did, and I was offered the job. To be honest, I took it because it really intrigued me. It challenged me. I had to learn new software. Pro Engineer was the software at the time prior to SolidWorks becoming popular. I grew up in a small manufacturing facility in Rexdale, Etobicoke, before being asked to join a head office or the technical center to help run the design studio. So, it was thrown in at the deep end and learning the basics of manufacturing and having to design and develop and sell your goods.
Well, what is a great background in preparing you well for your role at the APMA. And at the APMA, you've had many achievements and are leading major global initiatives. I'd like to focus on two areas of innovation that you're involved in. One is cybersecurity and the other is Project Arrow. Can you talk about the cybersecurity initiatives at the APMA and the journey that has resulted in the production of such major pieces of work like CyberKit 1.0 and CyberKit 2.0 and other activities supporting the members of the APMA?
There's a name that's synonymous now in Southern Ontario in the auto sector, and he goes by the name of Mr. AJ Khan. AJ arrived at the APMA offices back in 2018 towards the end of the calendar year, and after a 1-hour meeting, Peter, I think we both understood the need and the requirements. So between November of 2018 and January of 2019, we launched the APMA Cybersecurity Committee, and very proud to say within 8 months we created the first offering, which was CyberKit 1.0. And this document, if I can describe it that way, will help a company, whether you're green around cybersecurity or whether you're well versed in cybersecurity, to understand how to build the complete model and the governance for cybersecurity in the automotive sector, specifically in its supply chain. Now, the passion and the need was because a car today, Peter, is typically 20 to 23,000 components that come together and get assembled. And the reality is that a lot of these now have embedded electronics and embedded software and intelligence. And so rather than having to put all of that pressure on the OE to be able to flush out or identify any threat vectors, we feel it's absolutely adamant for the auto sector to being cyber versed and making sure that they understand the importance of cybersecurity, privacy, and cyber safety. And so There is a lot of work to do, and that's why we're very passionate, and the Cybersecurity Committee at the APMA has now grown from the original 8 members to 43 members today, and that's why we're producing, products like CyberKit 2.0, and now we have these task forces, doing further work.
No, it's great leadership, and being involved myself in some of the work, I understand what has been accomplished. One of the questions I have, though, is how is Canada, in your view, handling cybersecurity in the automotive industry relative to how it's being handled in the U.S. and other countries around the world?
When we talk of Canada, Peter, we'd have to talk of it through the lens of the supply chain, because we don't have our own OEM. And so I would say through the lens of supply chain, we are as functional as any other geographic sector, whether it's south of the border or whether it's across the pond to Europe and other parts of the world. To put everything to context, the automotive sector has only just released the SAE ISO 21434 standard, which dropped, I believe, in late 2021. So that should kind of really be an indication of how much work there is to be done when the regulatory standard has only just been kind of sent out. It's now going to take probably the next 18 months for companies to meet those standards and regulations, and then to move forward. There is a lot of work to be done, Peter, a lot of work. But I don't think we're any worse off than any other jurisdiction. If anything, I think with the work that's ongoing with organizations like yourselves and the APMA Cybersecurity Committee, we are getting more recognition as a leading voice in innovation around cybersecurity.
So, Colin, thank you. The APMA is doing a lot of work in leading Canada in cybersecurity. In Europe and other countries outside of Canada, independent testing, verification, and validation requires a third party for cybersecurity standards. The OEMs are not allowed to certify themselves, whereas in Canada, Transport Canada doesn't require independent testing. Rather, they set up a set of guidelines that need to be achieved. Do you see Canada requiring, at some point, harmonizing its regulations with Europe, Japan, and South Korea?
I think the movement from the regulatory bodies like the ones you've mentioned, Peter, come from the fact that, Europe, South Korea, and the US are home to their own OEMs. So their policies are influenced by the fact that you have these large kind of original equipment manufacturing companies there. And here at Canada, we are a assembler of vehicles for these other kind of, companies. And so I think the so-called movement has been based upon that. And I think as Canada moves hopefully towards introducing its own OEs, especially in this new technological advancement, and the vehicle no longer being a mechanical device actually, or an analog device. It's more of a technology platform and a technical device. I think there will be some homologation and a kind of a connection with the way things are done in Europe and Asia and the US.
Thank you for that. I think you have set the right context relative to Canada's role in the automotive sector globally. Can you say a few words about the global syndicate of mobility cybersecurity that you've established? Why did you start this organization, and what's its mission?
With the Cybersecurity Committee, as we started to be approached by sectors from the aerospace sector and to not necessarily marine but rail, we began to ask kind of questions of, well, why are we attracting, like a light attracts the flies and the bees to its core? Why is the committee suddenly being that focal point? Why are some global OEs asking to be a part of our committee? And the one thing, Peter, when you and I first started to communicate, and I think the one thing we all agreed upon was this kind of, this test for silo mentality, where somehow we all continue to work in our own silos. And so, between myself and AJ, as we started to kind of, look into, global issues around cybersecurity, lo and behold, we were quite shocked, to be honest, to learn that there is no such organization body that is talking about mobility holistically throughout all sectors. The concern, obviously, is a lot of the software and hardware now in the advancements of mobility is being used on multiple forms of mobility in multiple sectors. And so, the use of LiDAR technology or sensory output technology can be found in different kind of modes and in different vehicles. Yet everyone, Peter, seems to be working in their own silos. There is no lessons learned being bled from one to the other. And because we were asked by the Ontario Aerospace Council for them to have a seat on our committee, that really was the nucleus. And so after doing research and finding there was no such governing body, we decided that Canada, as usual, has a global leading opportunity to play here. And we created the Global Syndicate for Mobility Cybersecurity. We've approached multiple nations and organizations, and everybody said yes. When everybody understands what we're trying to do, no, we're not trying to write new regulations or policies, we're here to help. Yes, we want to increase cyber innovation, and yes, we want to increase the public-private partnerships, and yes, we want to increase the importance of cyber workforce and talent being generated. And so now we're very delighted to have, some major global companies that are a part of GSMC, but also jurisdictions. I think every month we have a conclave, and every month we're including new groups from new jurisdictions throughout the globe. So we really think it's going to become that holistic group to help solve or move the needle forward when it comes to cybersecurity and mobility.
Everything you're doing, taking it from one level to a global level, reflects this desire for you to give back to society and make a contribution. And along those lines, you've made comments that it's important for Canada's decision makers, public and private, to create the right environment, provide the tools needed for Canadian talent to move from a supporting role to a leading role globally. How does that requirement for Canadian talent to take a leading global role relate to your Project Arrow initiative?
Peter, obviously very passionate about this project that myself and the president of the APMA, Flavio Volpe, kind of, materialized over a plate of red grapes and Welsh cheese from Costco. We were contemplating the value of having, projects related to the advancements of mobility here in Canada. What materialized was a project called Project Arrow, which is a tip of the hat to the Avro Aero, the 1950s, aerospace project, which was, put on hold and then cancelled after 5 prototypes were made. So we decided to call it the Avro Aero, and because that mistake was not going to be repeated. And we decided to, expand it to help showcase the best of Canada's capabilities in the traditional sectors around the automotive industry, as well as in the technology sectors. And so that kind of, 4-phase, 2-year project, we're currently in the critical phase, which is the engineering and build phase. And this year in December, we will complete the build of this fully working prototype concept vehicle. And we will do an unveiling here in Canada before the end of the year. And then it will start in 2023, Peter, a North American tour. The one thing that will most definitely happen between now and December is my beard will have a lot more grey and white hairs in it. But I wouldn't have it any other way. It is exciting for us at the APMA to be provided this leadership role. But it is also going to be exciting for Canadians to experience and to see what capabilities Canada has. And we're so excited and delighted to be able to show some of that innovation in 2023.
A fascinating project, a wonderful initiative. It's going to put a great spark in Canadians to have its own, created vehicle. How do the OEMs operating in Canada view Project Arrow? Is it seen as a threat, or are they actively engaged?
When we first started the project, we said to ourselves that maybe we wouldn't include the global OEs, but I have to give a shout out to Toyota Canada and the team out there in Cambridge and Woodstock, Ontario. They're on the phone and they're asking, how can we help? And so they have provided us with Lexus RX 350s to be able to use for some of those more standard, what I would call mundane parts that you don't necessarily need to reinvent, the steering and suspension systems. But they have been very supportive. And at our conference in December, Peter, our friends from Honda Canada also approached us and said, hey, how do we get involved and how can we support? So, we're very happy and delighted for that kind of support. But really, this is an initiative to show Canada's capabilities and the supply chain specifically, its capabilities. And to tell the world, to be honest, that if nations like Vietnam can launch VinFast and Turkey can launch TOG, Canada isn't far behind.
Colin, thank you very much for that, and thanks for your and Fabio's leadership in launching Project Arrow. Lastly, my question is really, or more of a discussion about your book, The Three Houses, A Journey to a Better Life. I've read it, I found it inspirational, and I was moved by your story of overcoming many challenges in your life, and in particular, the story about the two spiritual leaders who became interwoven in your personal and family life over your period of over 16 years, I believe. And with the last one turning out to be a complete fraud. And yet you retained your faith, drew strength from that experience to build your resolve and strength of character. You even called that chapter, Thank You, Faker. To what extent has that experience helped you build your success in life? And I'll stop there, and then I'll ask you what motivated you to write this book.
Well, I'll do a shameless plug, of my book, and it's going to be launched, Peter, in the next month or so. I'm very excited. This is like 7 years in the making. I have to give a shout out to my mentor, Michael Pinball Clements, who actually asked me to write the book. The conversation piece around the book and its title and its subtitle, A Journey to a Better Life, Peter, really is about how does a person who grows up and born and bred in the UK in the 1970s face racism from a very tender age and continue to face it until I really left the shores of the UK and arrived here in Canada in the mid-90s. And this place has been my safe haven. It's been my home. It's been where I have grown as a person. The objective of the book, Peter, is to say, look, you can have all of these challenges in life. We all do. They come in different forms. Some are, through adversity because of family relations. Some are adversity through financial crises that people have to go through. But the one thing Michael always used to say to me on our lunch kind of get-togethers was, you have every right to walk around with a chip on your shoulder, Colin, but you don't. And that is what we've got to share. And so my whole book's premise and sharing some of those personal stories and then kind of, the crescendo of the book really being about kind of these philosophies around how to achieve this kind of happy, better life. And for me, that spiritual journey, which I actually started, I think, around the age of 8, and the first kind of spiritual teacher was a part of my life for maybe 20 years, I would say. It's that second character who actually taught myself and my wife so much, Peter. We would go to the foothills of the Himalayas and to speak to holy men and to try and kind of, go on the inner journey and find enlightenment through meditation. My old boss, my old operations manager at my old company would tell you of the time in the summer at a 3:00 meeting in the afternoon, I was kind of nodding off, and he was aware, and he pulled me aside after the meeting, said, hey, maybe your 1 to 2 o'clock, meditation schedule needs to be tweaked a bit because it's beginning to, affect your work. But Peter, it was a yearning internally to try and find those solutions to not carry baggage from yesterday, to wake up and to wake up happy and to go to bed happy. And so as much as I could be blaming this fake fakir, I've actually thanked him for those 8 years of learning that were provided for me and my wife to help to be happy to represent a particular faith, but not to be delusional around any faith. We are all on this journey. We're all here for a limited amount of time. Flavio, who's my good friend and mentor as well, he talks about being on a spinning rock around this, ball of fire. It's a miracle we're here anyway. So how do we make sure that this miracle continues in our daily lives? And so really the essence of the book, The Three Houses, which is all about contentment, commitment, and contribution, becomes to the core, and, really happy for all of the experiences that have kind of, added and been used as a collection for the book.
Colin, thank you very much. I've read the book. It's a great book. And I understand that you're giving 100% of the proceeds to charity.
Absolutely. I think it may be plural charities. We are looking at more than one. The reality is I've wrote this book to help people. Why would I want to profit from it? So we are definitely looking at giving the money to charities which kind of support mental health, here in Canada specifically. And then, the objective of the book really is to also begin to speak and to help people and to, on stays, motivate people as well. The one thing, and you've known me now for a few years, I'm vertical all the time. You will never know a Colin who's horizontal or walks around as if like the world's about to end, when in reality, as you probably read through the book, I lost my mom 8 years ago. A foundation in everybody's life is your mother, yet the way I describe my mom and that journey, again, I see it through a glass half full lens as opposed to a half empty. I appreciate those 50 odd years that I was able to share with her versus, complaining about her going too soon.
Well, certainly she was a marvelous woman and provided a lot of inspiration, I think, in helping build the character that drives you vertically. I think this is a good way to end our talk, Colin, and I really want to thank you for participating in an excellent discussion for this test talk. So thank you very much.
Peter, again, absolutely delighted that you would ask me to speak on Test Talk, and really happy to have had the conversation.
For the viewers, you can get access to the CyberKit 1.0 and CyberKit 2.0 on the APMA website. The link to Colin's book is at kcsd.ca. Thanks again, Colin, and thanks to the viewers for joining us on this test talk.
Thank you very much.